tripping up. So that's one. The other is zaj. Raj. Sorry. إِذَا رُجَّتِ الْأَرْضُ رَجَّ. Right? Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about raj. And this is actually an initial jerk. Like something was stationary and all of a sudden it was put into motion. This is raj. Ulama comment that this is the first moment of the experience of an earthquake. That's raj. That's the very beginning of the experience of the earthquake. Then we have mara. يَوْمَ تَمُورُ السَّمَاءُ مَوْرًا. This is actually used when you are, for example, riding a horse, or you're running really fast, or a large animal passes by you running fast, and it simulates the feeling of an earthquake. It's not really an earthquake, but everything's shaking because of the rapid motion. That is called mara. Finally, we come to the word that's used in this ayah. Allah says, يَوْمَ تَرْجُفُ الرَّاجِفَةِ. When that which is meant to rattle, rajifa, the rattling one, will eventually rattle. Allah Azza wa Jal did not here mention the earth. In another place in the Quran, Allah says, يَوْمَ تَرْجُفُ الْأَرْضُ وَالْجِبَالِ تَرْجُفُ الْأَرْضُ وَالْجِبَالِ وَكَانَتِ الْجِبَالُ كَثِيبًا مَهِيلًا. The day on which the land, the earth, and the mount, and the large boulder mount, they are going to rattle. They're going to shake and vibrate, as though they were kathiban mahila, that they were sand dunes. When you shake a pile of sand, the sand keeps tripping over and falling off, right? As though they were that soft. That's how the earth is going to shake, that Allah describes. Imagine salt in a salt shaker, basically. That's the image that Allah depicts. But there He said the earth and the mountains are going to shake. Here He said يَوْمَ تَرْجُفُ الْأَرْضُ وَالْجِبَالِ. No, يَوْمَ تَرْجُفُ الرَّاجِفَةِ. Al-Rajifa means that which is meant to shake. What this illustrates is the purpose of the creation of the heavens and the earth. Its final destination is the point where it's going to shake. It's going to be rattled. This is its destiny. It can't be avoided. So much so that it's called Al-Rajifa. It's so much so that the fa'il isn't Al-Ard wal-Jibal, that it's Rajifa itself. So it's a profound declaration in the Quran about the reality of that shaking. Finally, just a comment about the word Rajaf. It's a highly uncomfortable motion. And it actually doesn't just depict the motion itself, it depicts the state of the one who is affected by that motion, that they're in a state of discomfort and disarray. Now, يَوْمَ تَرْجُفُ الرَّاجِفَةِ, then Allah says, تَتْبَعُهَا الرَّادِفَةِ. It will be followed by a radifa. Radif in Arabic implies, when you're riding a camel or a horse and somebody's sitting behind you, then they are radif. They're riding behind you. People sitting in the back seat in your car nowadays, they're radif. They're following right along. Wherever you go, they're going, because they're on the same ride. So Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that it'll be followed by another vibration, another jerking, another violent movement, one successively following the other, one meant to follow the other. A lot of the ulama are pretty much in agreement on this radifa, this following, shaking and vibrating, that the first one is when the first time the trumpet will be blown. In the previous surah we said, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ, right? We've heard those words. And now that's being opened up. There's a tafsir of the previous text in the next surah. Okay? So now, how many times will the trumpet be blown? Twice. The first one, يَوْمَ تَرْجُفُ الرَّاجِفَةِ. Then the second one, تَتْبَعُهَا الرَّادِفَةِ. So there's a long gap between them, but they are one to succeed the other one. One comes necessarily, the other's on its way. Radif literally implies, like we said, to sit behind. And when words come one after another in meaning, that they're very close to each other in meaning, but they're not exactly the same, but they're still very close, they're called mutaradif. So synonyms in Arabic are called mutaradifat, for example. That's because they're very close to one another. Other words that speak of following in the Quran are khalfa. Khalfa actually refers to when you follow something chronologically, meaning something came, then thereafter something else came, that's khalf. Radif, literally right behind, like we said, situated behind and moving along with. Then we have tala, which is to follow something carefully and repeatedly. Like, for example, it's used for the sun and the moon, because the sun and the moon follow a path repeatedly. Anyhow, قُلُوبٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَاجِفَةٌ. Allah says, first of all, the earth will violently shake when the trumpet is blown. And then the second time, it will be shaken another time. And this other time is when we will be raised. The first one was for death and the second one is for resurrection. So now on the time of this resurrection, Allah depicts the first thing. He says, قُلُوبٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَاجِفَةٌ. Hearts on that day. And actually qulubun, by mentioning it first and not putting al on it, which is normally the case in Jumla Ismiya, by not putting al on it, there's an interesting nuanced meaning that's generated. Some hearts on that day, some hearts particularly on that day, will experience what Allah depicts as wajifa. Here, I know this is a long list, but I still want to illustrate this list, or at least express some of the meanings in this list before we go into the word wajifa, because it's critical for you to appreciate the depth of the words in Arabic. One of my agendas in these durus is to try to highlight how incomplete translations are. How incomplete, even my own translation, how incomplete it is. Because how deep the words go and how intricate the meanings are connected to one another. And we have to be careful in coming to conclusions about tafsir of Quran. Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about the word wajif, and most translations will say petrified, horrified, terrified, scared. These are the words. Basically words associated with fear. Now here's some words in the Quran that are used for fear, just so we know how they're different. One of the words used for fear is khawf. Khawf. You probably heard this word before. It's a very famous word. La khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. Khawf is used for a perceived danger. When you actually perceive a physical danger, then the word used is khawf. Another word is khashya, like وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ إِمْلَاقٍ. Okay? Khashya is used when you are afraid of the magnitude of something. Specifically out of the magnitude of whatever is coming, that is scaring you, that is khashya. So khawf is more of a physical danger, while khashya is the greatness of something, like the magnitude of the implications of losing one's job, or the magnitude of just the idea of Day of Judgment will lead you to khashya, for example. Then there's the word khushu', which we use, for example, also in salah. This is a fear that's manifest not only in your heart, but it actually takes a hold of your face and your limbs. This fear shows on your face and your limbs. It's an overpowering and an instilling kind of fear. And this is the kind of fear we're supposed to have in salah. That it actually, our faces have khushu', not just our hearts. That khushu' comes out of the heart and it starts affecting other limbs of the body. Then there's the word taqwa, which is very common. Ittaqa yattaqi. This is to actually fear the consequences of one's actions. To fear not something dangerous, but the consequences of what I'm doing myself. This is actually called taqwa. It comes from wiqaya, which is to protect. And taqwa literally means to protect yourself from the consequences of your own future actions. Okay, that's how it's really in the literary sense it's understood. Then there's hadr, like hadar al-maut, right? They out of fear of death. Again, the translation will say hadr means fear, but hadr is actually out of fear to try to escape something, or to be very careful of something. If you see something scary and you're trying to kind of escape it, this is hadr. This is that specific kind of fear, which means you're in proximity of the thing that is dangerous, or the thing that you're trying to get away from. Then there's ra'a, to startle someone. When you jump up on somebody, or you show up out of nowhere, or the person was just reading and they unexpectedly heard the door open, the initial reaction is rawa. This is this fear immediate, but it subsides immediately also. This is the kind of fear that Ibrahim alayhi salam first felt when the angels came, but it departed from him. It left from him. This is raha. Okay. Then there's awjasa, or wajas it comes from. And this is actually a fear when you hear something. Like you hear something, you get scared. Or you hear something that scared you. You hear some news or some event you overheard and it scared you. This is awjas. Also means to actually hide your fear within you. You don't let the person that is scaring you or the thing that is scaring you know that you're actually scared. Okay? Nakarahum wa awjasa minhum khifa. This is actually spoken of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Nakirahum. He saw them, he didn't recognize them, he didn't know who these guys are, so he was kind of scared, but he didn't let them see that he was scared. So awjasa is used. He didn't let them see his fear. Then there's wajl. إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Wajl is used. Now wajl is to have a fear that penetrates deep into your heart. A fear that penetrates into the very depths of your heart. That's wajl. Rahab is a fear mixed with, it's actually mixed with love. So it's a kind of fear you have of disappointing the one you love. When you're afraid of disappointing the person that you love, then rahab is used. Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks, for example, of believers saying, يَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهَبًا. They call on us with inclination, they're inclined towards their Lord, and they're also afraid. But what kind of fear? The fear of disappointing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's rahab. Okay? Then finally, ra'ab actually to be overwhelmed with intense fear. This is وَقَذَفَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمُ الرُّعْبَ. Also, ru'b comes from this, right? To have overwhelming, terrified fear of someone that makes you lose your reason. Then ashfaqa, this is a kind of fear all of us have. This comes from, it's actually related to the word shafiqa ala. To have, shafqa over someone is to take care of them, to be concerned with their well-being, etc. Right? To show good to them. But then ashfaqa means that you're afraid that some harm will come to them. the one you're taking care of, you're also scared that some harm might come their way. So many different kinds of fear illustrated in so many different places where it's best situated in the Quran. Of all of these, finally, we come to the word wajaf, which is قُلُوبٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَاجِفَةٌ. That's the word that's used here. What is special about this kind of fear? It is a fear mixed with discomfort. And it's illustrated, the one who's feeling wajaf is the one whose heart is pounding so hard they can feel it out of fear. That's when wajaf is used. And this is also used when you strike your horse and its heart starts pounding and it races forward. So you say, أَوْجَفْتُ الْخَيْلَ. I made my horse race forward by making its heart race. So that's the kind of fear that Allah depicts on that day. When that second strike will fall, when that second shaking will occur, some hearts on that day will be basically beating out of their chests. That's the illustration here. قُلُوبٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَاجِفَةٌ. Especially on that day, some hearts will be beating out of their chests. The language, the sentence structure here also illustrates that these hearts right now, they're not scared. Right now they're at peace. They have no discomfort at all. But these are the very same hearts, especially on that day, يَوْمَئِذٍ, they're going to experience this wajifa. And also wajifa is an ism fa'il, it's a nominal form. What that illustrates is, when your heart starts pounding, a few minutes later it comes to rest, it calms down. The choice of the word in the ayah illustrates their heart will start pounding and it won't come to rest. It'll continuously keep pounding. It'll keep, the terror won't subside. قُلُوبٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَاجِفَةٌ. Then Allah says something beautiful. He says, أَبْصَارُهَا خَاشِعَةٌ. Again depicting the terror of that day. Sometimes Allah depicts the terror of that day by things that are going to happen on that day, like the sun and the moon's collision and big, big things. Sometimes He depicts the terror of that day looking at the person and how scared they are. Not at the scary things that are happening, but their reaction to those things. So this is a surah that's highlighting more so the reaction to the events of the Day of Judgment of this person. Allah says, أَبْصَارُهَا خَاشِعَةٌ. Their vision, the visions of those hearts, or the eye, there here refers to the hearts, not the people, because it's not أَبْصَارُهُمْ, it's أَبْصَارُهَا. What this tells us is that the vision is directly connected to the heart. That's a very important reality to understand. What you see and how you perceive what you see is directly affected by what you have in your heart. When you have iman in your heart, what you see will be a reminder for you. When you feel the wind, when you see the sun, when you see the clouds, you'll get a reminder out of them. When you don't have iman in your heart, those same eyes will do nothing for you. So now on that day, people will not see except from a believing heart, because now iman is haqqul yaqeen and ayn al-yaqeen. They've seen it. So now those hearts, those eyes that are connected to these hearts now that are petrified, what's going to happen to those eyes? Khashi'ah. They will be overpowered, overwhelmed, humbled. Their muscles be relaxed. So these eyes will be overwhelmed by the fear that is going to be presented before them. Now this was the state of these some hearts that don't feel any fear now, but they will fear this terrifying day then. Now immediately there's an iltifat, there's a transition. And this transition illustrates irony. The irony of the whole thing is, as it stands now, يَقُولُونَ أَإِنَّا لَمَرْدُودُونَ فِي الْحَافِرَةِ. They say, a rough translation, they say, is it really the case that we're going to be returned to the original state? We're going to come back to life as we are now? Right back where we started is the expression we use in English. That's for hafira. If somebody says, for example, in Arabic, فُلَانٌ رَجَعَ إِلَى حَافِرَتِهِ, or فِي حَافِرَتِهِ. This is an expression in ancient Arabic. This person came back right where they started. So when they hear this whole thing about us coming back to life, our hearts pounding, then the first reaction they have is, oh, come on, we're going to come back right to this again? We're going to be back here again? Some of the scholars commented on the word hafira, which is an important word here, but a couple of things here. Number one, the word mardud. إِنَّا لَمَرْدُودُونَ. Are we really going to be returned? But this rad refers to a kind of return when you go somewhere and you weren't accepted and you were returned. Like you tried to cross the border and they didn't accept your paperwork and they sent you back. This is rad. So they're saying we're going to be rejected and sent back like this. Like our death wasn't acceptable enough, now we have to be brought back to life. This is a means of sarcasm of the disbeliever. Then he says al-hafira. Al-hafira is literally from hufr, which is a ditch in the ground that you dig. Okay, or mihfar is actually a shovel. That's how it's used. So they're basically saying, the imagery in language, you have to understand imagery in classical Arabic.